Thank you for joining us today. My name is Rosalind Dahl. I'm the Communications and Development Director for the Oley Foundation. I think most people are probably familiar with the Oley Foundation who are on with us today, but just in case this is your first experience, I'd like to briefly introduce the organization. The Oley Foundation strives to enrich the lives of those living with home nutrition support, both intravenous nutrition, sometimes called HPN or TPN, and tube feeding. We do this through outreach, education, and networking. The Oley Foundation was founded in 1983 by Dr. Lynn Howard and her patient Clarence Oley Oldenburg. Today we serve approximately 17,000 members. All of our programs are free of charge for patients and their families. First, a few housekeeping details before we start the actual webinar. You should see a toolbar on the right side of your screen. Click on the orange arrow to show the control panel. In the questions section, you can type any questions you have for me or for the presenter. Please note we will not be responding to the hand-raising function in the control panel. We will answer as many of the questions as possible during the questions and answers period at the end of the presentation. We'll be posting a recording of the presentation on the Oley website tomorrow or shortly afterwards. Please note that we've muted all of the participants, so you don't need to worry if there's background noise where you are taking this webinar. If you're having technical issues, please go to the Citrix website at the address on your screen. It's in the middle of the screen, just below the photo of our presenter, Jeff Fairbanks. And now it gives me great pleasure to introduce Jeff Fairbanks, today's presenter. Jeff is a social media and technology specialist with the U.S. Department of State Public Diplomacy Training Foreign Service Institute in Arlington, Virginia. Jeff works with people all over the world on communicating better with technology. Over the last several years, he has focused on the use of social media. He also has a daughter that has been on home parental nutrition since birth. She is now 20 years old. Thank you so much for presenting today, Jeff. I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you. I hope everyone can hear me. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go and show my screen. So I'm hoping that you can see my full slides. Okay, I'm going to guess that you can. So hi everybody, welcome. Thanks for joining us. Again, this webinar is, I spoke at the Oley conference last summer, which was really fun, and I was really happy to be asked back again. Healthcare and issues of healthcare are a pretty passionate thing for me, along with, as Roz said, the technology and communications that I work with in my regular job. Yes.
I'm not seeing your slides personally.
Okay, here, let's see if I...
Sorry to interrupt.
No. Let's see. I think we knew this might happen. Let's see. I think I need to do this. Can you see my... You can see my desktop now, and probably now you see the slides?
Nope.
Try this again.
Now we see them.
Okay, and it's full screen?
Yep, full screen.
Okay, terrific, great. So I'm here talking about harnessing the power of social media, and I hope that I can be helpful. I'm going to go through a number of different things, and then, as Roz said, at the end we're going to take questions. So please, as you think of them, ask, and then we'll talk at the end. What I've got in this slide is just a tweet from a doctor, and I think we all sort of know that social media is where a lot of interesting information gets transferred and talked about. But let me start off with me a little bit and who I am. As Roz said, my daughter Celia, who's 20, has been on TPN since she was born, and having a baby with Hirschsprung's disease was obviously a huge thing in my family's life, and and it's really given me a great, I think, a different perspective than a lot of people have on issues of healthcare delivery, communications with doctors. And as I progressed in my career and started talking about communication, I've been more and more sort of excited about the opportunities and that different communications technologies and digital platforms have for to sort of help with some of the issues that healthcare providers and recipients are dealing with. Anyway, the next thing I'm just going to show real quick is Roz has got my information, but I just wanted to share that I have a page on Facebook called facebook.com/Jeff Social Media. You can find me on Facebook, and then also my email address is jeff@mungojeff.com. You'll see that again later. So I want to start off with just some tips about how to stay safe and secure online. When we talked about doing this webinar, this was one of our goals, was to just bring this up, and I always feel like it's really important to continue to stress this. I'm in my early 50s. I'm 52, and so I've been using email since like the early 1990s. And so I've been online for a long time, and I've always sort of had this impression that I didn't own these platforms. I'm using these platforms, but I've always sort of known that I couldn't really just let my guard down and do whatever I wanted to do, whether it was email or anything else. And this is something that we share at my job at the State Department all the time with diplomats and various employees of the State Department, is that, you know, there's just really no security online. If you're out there, if you're transmitting your conversations and stuff via the internet, somebody can hack it if they want to. Not to say that it's definitely going to happen, but it's just a good idea to have that sense that you know, there's no real guaranteed security to what we're talking about. Other than that, you know, when you're using platforms for various things, like, you know, to inform an audience or to have a conversation with other patients, or conversations between you and your healthcare providers, there are some just sort of common sense things that you can do. For one thing, each platform is going to be different. As probably many of you are aware, lots of these platforms you have to join, so you have to come up with a username and a password. It's always good to continuously change your password. When I say continuously, I mean, people will say different amounts of time, but, you know, generally about 4 to 6 times a year is a good rule of thumb to change your password. I know it's a pain in the butt. I hate to change passwords. I absolutely hate it. I know most people do, but at the same time, you know, if you're like me, you've got parents that are in their 80s. I've got mother and father-in-law that are in their 80s and 70s. I've got a lot of people that have my email address and communicate with me online who aren't as careful about security as I am. And so because of that, people are definitely going to find their way into your accounts that are not up to something that we want to be involved with. And so just changing that password on a fairly regular basis, as painful as it can be to do and keep track of, is really one of the best things you can do. Another thing that I want to share with you is platform specific. This is on Facebook. Facebook's done a really good job of changing how easy it is for Facebook users to look at their security situation. And this is a screenshot that I took from Facebook, and you can see up at the upper right-hand corner, there's that little lock icon with lines next to it. And if you go to that in the Facebook browser, you can pull this little menu down. And what's kind of neat here, as you can see, is they have a privacy checkup, which you can run, which is kind of fun. They've got a category of who can see my stuff, which I think is probably one of the most interesting things, or one of the most important things about Facebook, who can see my stuff.
Jeff,
Yes.
we're still seeing the original slide, harnessing the power of social media.
Thank you. Okay, so let me do this then. I think I'm going to have to press this play button each time. Do you
Yeah,
see?
now it's moved, thanks.
Okay, perfect, perfect, perfect. So let's see, and I think that means that each time I do a slide, I have to press the play button. So let me go back because I wanted you to see. Oh, now can you see me changing the slides?
Yes, I can see you changing the slides now.
Oh,
Here's your
okay.
email and your daughter.
Right, right, right. Okay. Well, I wanted to show you because I was talking about her that you couldn't see. Okay. Now we'll go forward. So keep calm and be safe online. So here we go with the privacy options in Facebook. And again, upper right hand corner, there's this little lock up there with the 3 lines. That is where you find this little menu. And you can see that we've got a privacy checkup. We've got who can see my stuff, who can contact me, and how do I stop someone from bothering me. So Facebook, I think, has done a terrific job of kind of boiling down the basic concerns that people have with security on Facebook and putting them all in this one little menu. But you can also see at the very bottom that if you want to go more in depth to the security settings, that there's a link right there that you can press on to see more settings, which is fantastic, and they're really easy. And the next slide, yes, it looks like you can see my next slide. This is one of the menus. There are a number of them. Facebook is pretty good in that they offer lots of different ways that you can protect your security. I wanted to focus on this one because I feel like this particular menu is one that people are going to use the most. And basically what this entails is, hey, who can add things to my timeline? Those of you who are familiar with Facebook know that whether it's your personal profile on Facebook or whether you've got yourself a page on Facebook that's more like a featured page for people to come to, the main avenue for showing people things there is the timeline. And so what's great is right here they're saying who can post to my timeline, and you get to decide. Is it only you, or do you want your friends to be able to post there? Whatever. And the edit button is always on the right-hand side. You can also see here who can see things on my timeline, and how can I manage tags people add and tagging suggestions. So some of you may realize that in Facebook there is an ability to tag things when you've got like an image as part of a post. And sometimes you don't want someone to be able to tag your name on a post. Maybe you don't want that. Or maybe you're fine with that. And in fact, maybe that's what you're hoping, is that lots of people will tag you in posts. It really just depends on the way you're using Facebook. But I think being aware of these things is really the most important thing, and being aware that you can change them depending on your circumstances. The main thing, and I'm going to go to my next slide just to see, because I can't see what's coming up next. Okay, well, this is good. So just to finish off my little bit on security, basically what you want to be careful of is just that whatever you do on social media or online, that you can back it up, that you feel comfortable with what you're saying. There's this whole thing of, people say don't drink and drive, and I've also heard the phrase, don't drink and post. In other words, think twice before you post anything. In today's world, Roz and I were talking about this before the event started. People will post just about anything, and people on social media will get a reputation for posting crazy stuff. Depending on the message that you want to put out there and what you want to talk about on social media, you want to make sure that people get the sense that you're at the wheel, and that the way you feel about things comes through in everything you do online. So I think it's really important. Also, if you're running a page and you're getting a lot of trolls, this is a question I get asked a lot. The best practice that we share with our social media people at State Department is to notify the person and let them know that they that they did something that you didn't like. In fact, what we require at State Department is that all of our Facebook pages have what we call a terms of use, and it's actually a really good rule of thumb even for personal pages. Is to have a rule to have in the about section under you in Facebook, have a description of what you will and will not tolerate on your page. That way, what you can do later is, if you get somebody who uses foul language or who uses hate speech even, which we get a lot of at the State Department, you can send a message to that person saying, sorry, our terms of use do not allow, foul language in our posts. And then you take their post down, you hide their post, whatever you're going to do. It's a really good way. And actually, we found that a lot of times that dealing with trolls in that way helps you, because they're less mad. If you just take their post down and don't say anything about it, sometimes they come back and just become more of a pain in your side. So anyway, we can talk about this more, and people can ask me more questions later about this. So why social media? So the reason I have a picture of Yellow Pages, I don't know your ages, the people that I'm talking to today, but it's getting to the point where some young people that I talk to don't even know what the Yellow Pages even were. So it's starting to make me feel a little bit old when I'm realizing that people don't even know what the Yellow Pages were. But social media is so many things nowadays. It really functions in a way like the Yellow Pages used to. In other words, how do you find a business? How do you find people in your area? We're going online. Now, it may not be a social media platform like Facebook. It might be something like Yelp. It might just be Google search. But more and more often, businesses and service providers, all these different things are on Facebook a lot, which in a way is good for us. It's good to be able to find things in one place and be able to search things easily. But basically, the reason why it's so important for those of us who are out there who want to get in a discussion with somebody about healthcare, or if we want to put out information, or we want to share with people the stories that we have about the good things that have happened to us because of our use of TPN or HPEN or et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Social media is where people are nowadays. It's very, very difficult to get people that are gathered around a particular topic except for on social media anymore. One thing that we talk about at State Department a lot is that, because we're oftentimes can be very focused on Facebook and Twitter, which are great platforms, but there are so many other platforms out there. I don't know how many of you might be familiar with this platform, WhatsApp. But WhatsApp is a very popular texting program that's owned by Facebook, actually, and it's especially popular in the developing world, anywhere where there's a lot of people with smartphones. And as you all can imagine, smartphones are pretty much becoming a worldwide phenomenon. WhatsApp is a great platform, and people really like WhatsApp. But the thing about WhatsApp that's sort of interesting to me, anyway, is that I think it reflects a change in the way people are using social media, in the sense that they're definitely opting for more platforms that that require an opt-in. Facebook, as you guys probably know, you can be on Facebook, and people can, and if you've got a page on Facebook versus a personal profile, people can like your page, and there's really nothing you can do to stop them if you've got a publicly available page. But WhatsApp is different. WhatsApp, you have to let somebody into your little network. And I really think that moving forward, quite a few people, and the young people in my life, which would be my two daughters, my 16-year-old and my 20-year-old, seem to be more and more gravitating towards these closed networks where you have to have an opt-in. You have to have somebody that will allow you to have their email address or have their WhatsApp number. So it's just really interesting. But anyway, there's lots of platforms out there. So as we talk about social media, I like to talk about it in as broad a terms as possible, but sometimes we need to get specific. I'm going to try to ride that line as we continue. So This is a slide that I love to share. It's from a guy who I really follow pretty religiously about these types of matters, and his name is Seth Godin. He's got a blog out there, and if you are interested in these types of things, I think his blog is super worth looking into. He does a new blog post just about every day. It's just called Seth's Blog. You can Google it. Um, and I just find that he's a great thinker about issues of connectivity, communication in the digital age. He's also kind of a marketing guru, but I find that his ideas are much broader than just marketing. I'm just going to read this because I don't know how you all are seeing these slides, and so I just want to make sure that you hear this anyway, that this slide says, today it's on us to organize our own conversations, find our own connections, most of all to bring generosity and energy to communities that don't have enough of either one. I think this is so important because I really do feel that, especially in the areas of healthcare, in areas where people are getting information out there, I really do feel like there are communities of people out there. They may not know each other yet, but they would really benefit from knowing other people in their similar situations. They would benefit from knowing, here's how I work with my doctors, here's how I work with my healthcare providers, here's how I work with my pharmacies, whatever. Those things could be very helpful information. In fact, almost life-changing safety issues, all sorts of things could really benefit from having a community. But as we all know, it's difficult to do these things. It's time consuming, it's hard, because it takes energy to throw this stuff together. Because you have to corral your information, you need to get it out there, and that can sometimes be difficult. But I definitely think it's worthwhile. But I think we have to be clear-headed about it as we do these things. We have to know that it's not easy. It's not something that doesn't take work, and that's going to be a theme too as we go along. But the conversations part, I think, is really important, because I think a lot of times with social media, people just think you put a cool post out there and you're done. But I think the real power of social media, and especially the newer social media, the Snapchats, the WhatsApps, the Instagrams of the world, where conversation is such an important part. I do think that those take a little bit more work, a little bit more trouble. So we're going to keep talking about that. So hope you can see this. So content is what everybody thinks of when you think of social media, and everybody thinks, oh, it's so fun, it's so great, I'm going to share this great picture, I'm going to share this great video and this great article, and everybody's going to love me. And to a certain extent, that's true. I mean, it's one of the funnest things about social media content is to excite people, get people interested in the thing that you're interested in, which is awesome. But we like to, in the State Department especially, one thing we've realized is that there's real people out there, and they have real concerns. They have real lives that they're leading, and they're doing things online for their own reasons and for their own realities. And so you can't just dip in and dip back out again and really provide anything to those people that's meaningful. You have to, it's a little bit more serious than that. We talk a lot about strategy in the State Department, and I think, even though it sounds very government-ish and very, serious, but I think it's good to think about strategy when we think about social media, because basically, like, why are we doing it in the first place? I mean, we've got some serious reasons, and it's worth thinking a little bit about why we're doing what we're doing, because I think, and this is something that we try to teach our folks at the State Department, is that you have a really serious reason why you're doing this. It's worth spending a little bit of time to figure out how to really get the thing that you want. This is another slide, besides the people jumping up and down. I like this one because it's kind of like all of us, I think, at this point are sort of familiar with campaigns out there that do something like, have everybody, eat too much cinnamon or dump buckets of ice water on top of their heads. And all those things are great, they're good for certain things. They're good for getting interest in a topic. But is this quality content? Now, quality content is especially important in a product like or a platform like Facebook, because as probably some of you are aware, Facebook filters out everything that you and I get in our news feeds in Facebook, so that we're only really going to get things that Facebook thinks we want to see. And so that's where quality and strategy are important, because, for instance, if you're trying to reach people who want to know about, let's say, my very first slide, and people want to know about the soy-based lipids that are going into TPN, and they want to know when are the soy-based lipids going to be available in the US, that kind of thing. That's really important stuff. And so you don't really want to trivialize that. You want to make sure that people who are looking for that information can find your posts, which is an important thing in Facebook. But I'm going to move to my next slide. And this is the only slide where I'm really going to dig into strategy, because I don't want your eyes to glaze over, and I don't want to bore people. But I do think that just real quick, this is the thumbnail version of what we go over and over again in the State Department. First, have a goal. Now, your goal could be just something as simple as, you know what? Right now, the only people who are following my blog are my family. And I would like, I think I'm writing some pretty cool stuff on my blog. I would like to get like 100 more people to check out my blog. That's a great goal. And the thing is that once you have that goal, you've got a lot, actually, because then you can really start working towards meeting that goal, and you can do concrete things towards that goal. Otherwise, if you kind of haven't really ever thought about what it is that you want out of things, it's much more difficult to know how to get there. And I know this is kind of like strategic planning 101, but a lot of us don't think that way, especially about social media. Number two, the audience is so important to think of. Who is my audience? So let's say, back to my example of something like a new type of TPN that's coming out or something like that. Who would be the audience for that? Well, obviously, probably going to be TPN users. And so what's really important to do is to get out there and see who's out there who's interested in TPN. I was searching a little bit yesterday. That's when I found that tweet from that one doctor about the soy-based lipids. I was just doing a little bit of searching, but sometimes it takes a little bit of time to really look out there and see who's talking about these things, who's interested, because that kind of gives you a sense of what is the potential audience, who's out there talking about this, who might I be able to interface with that could help me find even more audience for this. And then number three is the behavior that you want from them. What is it that you want them to do? Do you want them to send a letter to their congressman about some health insurance issue? Do you want them to come to your conference? Do you want them to join your Facebook group where everybody's going to talk about how they clean their lines? There's so many different behaviors that you could be looking for. You could also just be looking for someone to download the PDF of your file of your latest blog or whatever. But having that behavior that you want to get from the audience that you've chosen that meets your goal, that is really great, because then you can say to yourself, okay, I was really hoping to increase my my followers of my blog by 100. That's such a great goal. And that also becomes the behavior, of course, is fairly simple. You want people to subscribe to your blog. In fact, you want 100 people to subscribe to your blog. And if that happens, great. You can be like, hey, I reached my goal. If that doesn't happen and you only got 50 people, that's still great, because then you can look back at everything you did. You can look back at the feedback that you got from people. You can reach out to new people that you met. And then that allows you to start building the community and the network that you need to ultimately reach your goal of getting those 100 people to subscribe to your blog. And I don't like to go too huge with those goals. I mean, and I don't like to go too small either. If your goal is like, I want my mom to read my blog, well, that's a great goal, but at the same time, that's pretty mild. Maybe your mom probably already read it or wants to read it, so it's not hard. But you know what I'm saying. In other words, set yourself a goal that's maybe a little bit ambitious, but not like I want the moon to move closer to the Earth kind of a goal. The example that I have on this slide, the Peace Corps and U.S. Marines, is just that Peace Corps and U.S. Marines are good to look at online because they have very specific audiences that they're outreaching to. Of course, Peace Corps and U.S. Marines, ironically, if you think about it, are kind of aiming at the same audience. They're looking at high school students that are getting ready to graduate. They're looking at college students that are getting ready to graduate, and they're looking for young people to join those organizations. And so I think that their social media is especially good to look at because of that, because it's because they cater to young people, and it's interesting to see the ways that they talk and communicate with the young audiences. U.S. Marines do a lot of interesting stuff on Snapchat, so does the Peace Corps. So anyway, just a good example to take a look at. So from my earlier slide with Seth Godin, excuse me, this is another thing that he says, and he talks about creating content and getting people to come to your website or your Facebook page or your Twitter feed or whatever. He says that what you need is a circle of engagement. And on one side of that circle, you have to do something that's worthy of attention. So in other words, oh, a new article where I'm going to give you some new information that you don't have. That's worthy of attention. Then on the other side is trusted. In other words, hey, you can trust in me that, on a fairly regular basis, I'm going to write a new blog post that's going to have some bit of interesting news for you. Or I'm going to bring you information that you really want about this, that, or the other thing, whatever it is that you're putting out there. And then that cycle just has to keep continuing because obviously only doing that cycle once is great, but it's not going to keep building your community and pushing your goals and your behaviors forward that you want. This is a picture of Sri Srinivasan, who is the digital head of at New York City. He used to be the digital engagement expert at the Met Metropolitan Museum in New York City and former journalism professor at Columbia. He's a great person to follow. He's such a good teacher on social media, and if you go to his Twitter feed, @Sri, he's always got interesting tips and techniques that are really good, especially for Twitter. But this list of things is that we're getting into content now, like what you need to do in your content, and I like this list because I think it's fantastic. But the thing that I really highlight, which is generosity, is something that we've already seen in Seth Godin's slide from earlier. Generosity is a huge part of social media, and the more and more I'm involved in social media, the more and more I see how important generosity is. Because again, we're dealing with people who are out there. They may already actually be super interested in your topic, but still, for them to come to your site, for them to get involved in your conversation, there has to be something in it for them. Now, you don't have to torture yourself about this, but to the extent that you can be generous, and what I mean by generosity when it comes to social media are things like links to cool articles, pictures of something that they might not have seen before, a report from a conference that you went to that nobody else got to go to, or very few people went to, with information that they wouldn't have gotten otherwise. All these little bits of things that you're giving to your audience and in your community that you're a part of are generous. And it's that generosity that people will come back for, because otherwise, you'll find certain people are just have the time and they really want to get involved, but other people, it's really good to have something that really, gives them that extra spice that brings them there and keeps them there. This slide I love, this is a Facebook post which I saw, and I grew up in Southern California and had possums around me the whole time when I was growing up, and I hated possums. I was so afraid of them, and I thought they were terrible things. But I saw this Facebook post and immediately changed my entire opinion of possums based on one Facebook post. And I think this can be the power of social media. You can really change people's minds. Um, Oftentimes it doesn't work so well when you're shouting at people, but I love the platform of this post where it's basically a flyer and it's telling you all the really interesting, unusual, unexpected things about possums that are so awesome. And one of the reasons why now I'm their biggest fan. And this is what you really want to get out of your social media content. And I know it may seem like I'm setting the bar really high, but here's the thing to remember about social media content. If you have drab content, it actually can ironically drag your whole conversation and discussion down. Because especially on Facebook, a lot of times when I talk about these types of things, I'm referring to Facebook. Facebook will only show things to people that it thinks they want to see. And so to the extent that your content is really engaging for people, it's really generous, it's really got interesting stuff in it, you've got a great post, it's worth posting. Otherwise, if you don't have a great post, I would say hang on until you've got something really good. A lot of people feel like, oh, I've got to be really regular. I've got to be posting every day or posting 3 times a week or whatever. But I would say my argument would be if that's working for you, that's great. But my sense is that if you've got great content, you're better off. And then some of your content's not so great, you're better off waiting until you've got the great stuff. But that's me. Also, some things that work really well is top 5, top 3, top 10, those kinds of things. Always local things are great. And local doesn't have to be geographically local. It can be local as far as like, oh, for all of us on HPen, we've got this one issue. That's like a local issue too. Also, health and animals. So this is a huge one. This is NASA being one of the superstars of the US government as far as digital outreach. 75% of their time is spent listening. This comes directly from their head of digital engagement, and this is what he passes along to all his employees across the country and across the world, is listening. And this is when I'm in a live audience, I can ask people, why would they spend so much time listening? But of course, I can't do that right now. So you can be thinking of why. And I can tell you that the reason is because social media at its best is really a conversation. It really is a discussion. It's not just you blasting stuff out. Listening is how you understand what your audiences really care about. It's as simple as that, pretty much. The more we're out there listening, the more we understand how people involved in our various spheres of topics and interests are talking about the things that they care about. How are people talking about, home infusion therapy? How are people talking about, scary things that have happened to them with infections? What are they saying? What are the words that they are using? Because of course, when people are searching to find information, they're using words in search engines like Google. And so it's so good to know the way that people are talking, to understand the lingo, as it were. It's just a very, very important part of all this. Another thing that's important about content online is the delivery part, and I know not all of us are going to have this kind of a situation, but this is an example from, you might be able to see at the bottom of the Anti-Bullying Pro. They're on YouTube. This is a UK organization that tries to help with bullying in England. And I went to see a talk by their head of digital engagement, and he was so interesting. But one of the things that he really stressed was, who is delivering your message? Now, obviously, if you're running your blog, if you're running your Facebook page, it's going to be you that's delivering the message. But maybe you could get someone else who's also well known to your group, to your audience, like maybe a famous doctor, or perhaps another famous patient, or perhaps someone that's on YouTube that is doing YouTube videos that's interesting. You can reach out to these people online, and if they can deliver your message, sometimes they can deliver it in a more interesting, more popular way than you can. They use a lot of YouTubers at the anti-bullying stuff in the UK. The other thing that I'm going to say, the other side of this, is that most of the social media that the Anti-Bullying Pro uses is developed by their students. So they do these teaching programs where they teach the kids how to be anti-bullying ambassadors, and then the kids make the social media. So this is another thing to think about. You've got people who are in your group, in your community. Have them make a post for you. Crowdsource something you're doing. This is a way to get more people interested and to increase engagement with what you're doing. So this is a Facebook post from my friend Leah, who is a State Department employee currently located in Sarajevo in Bosnia-Herzegovina. And she was gifted a bunch of puppies, and she's giving them away. And she's giving them away for free. And it made me think that when it comes to social media, a friend of mine had a saying where she said, social media is free like a puppy's free. Because of course we all know that even though you might get a puppy for free, you got to buy them food, and you got to buy them, you know, a puppy pad and a bed to sleep on, and puppy snacks and visits to the vet, etc., etc., etc. So social media is not free. This is not something to enter into lightly. I'm not trying to dissuade anyone from doing social media. I think it's wonderful, and I think as long as your goals and your the behaviors you're looking for are kind of reasonable and fit within what you're willing to go for, then you can support it. But if you're aiming a little bit higher, one of the suggestions I'm going to give you is think about actually spending a little bit of money on your social media. Facebook is really at base an advertising company, and Facebook really works best when you spend a little bit of money on advertising. It can be a very small amount of money. You could start off with a budget of like $10 a month or something like that. But if you're really trying to build a community, doing some ads on Facebook is a tried and true way of increasing the amount of people that see your stuff. Sometimes it's very difficult to get enough organic, in other words, spending no money, reach of things on Facebook, but using advertisement is a really good thing. But there are other things, like for instance, are the images that you're using, how do they look? Is the computer that you're using, when you take pictures or when you do audio, does it sound good? You know, all those things cost money, and if you're really trying to get out there and be a resource for people and be a spot on the internet that they want to go to, sometimes it does take some money. And I know that's difficult sometimes. It's difficult for all of us, but I think it's worth at least mentioning. So here we are at the end, and I'm pretty much ready to take questions, but I just, at the end, wanted to just bring up Seth's quote one more time. And because I just think it's so important to think about social media in this way, that what we're looking to do is organize conversations, find connections with people, to bring generosity and energy to communities that don't have enough of either one. Really, really important, and I think going forward, you know, the whole model of like, well, I'm going to shout as loud as I possibly can on social media and a bunch of people are going to listen. I just don't think that model is going to continue. I think people are sick and tired of it after the latest presidential elections, and I think going forward, people are going to be more picky and choosy about the things that they do online. Of course, that will only become clear over time, and I'm not maybe the world's best you know, future prognosticator, but that's the way it appears to me, and so with that, I'm gonna hand it back to Roz, and we will answer some questions.
Great, thanks, Jeff. That was really, really informative, and I especially enjoyed the part about Seth and the generosity. That's a good way to think about things. We are ready for questions and answers, and I've got a shy audience out there. Nobody has sent us a question yet, so we can start with one of my questions, if you don't mind.
Sure.
I am wondering, and this is one of those multi-part NPR type of questions. Where do you draw the line with posting photos of yourself or your loved ones on social media that show medical devices or a medical situation? When is it raising awareness versus seeming to be attention seeking where it could, come to backfire on you? Are there any guidelines you can offer there?
That's a really good question. And the first thing that's coming to my mind is is more like for people who want to be doing some real serious outreach on social media and want to avoid that. And what I really feel is that if you're doing it strategically, and I mean strategically with a small s, in other words, like you don't have to, your whole life doesn't have to become about strategy, but I think if you've identified an audience and you've done a little bit of research, in other words, you know how people are talking about these issues online, and you kind of have a sense of what people are interested in and what they want to see, then you're a lot less liable to share something that doesn't really fit that because you've done your homework. I think it's really clear sometimes when you see posts from certain people that they really didn't spend too much time thinking about what they posted, they just posted it. Or their goal is different, and sometimes, and this is something that a friend of mine always says, sometimes it's quite easy to see the goal of people by their posting. And I think so, and when people post that way, they are going to turn off some people, but maybe they have an audience in mind that really likes what they're doing. From a security point of view, I think, which you didn't really ask, but I'm going to just throw that in there. Of course, when it comes to healthcare and when it comes to, certain types of, sharing, you just have to do a gut check and make sure, gut check, get it, so to speak. You have to just, think about, is this really pushing the discussion forward that I want to have, or am I just doing this because I can't think of anything better to do right now? I mean, I guess that's the thing that I'm thinking of the most.
Yeah, Jeff, that sounds really wise, and I appreciate your input on that. I think that is a good guidepost. That whole gut, without overplaying the pun there. That's a very valid check and balance on before you post. Just take a minute to think about it. So I have received a couple questions in the meantime.
Okay.
One of them is how does the advertising work? And I believe this is probably related to that last bit you were talking about with advertising on Facebook.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, so Facebook advertising is actually quite easy, and it's actually even kind of fun. Because what you can do is in Facebook, if you once you're in the dashboard, if you go head over to the right-hand side and click, there's a whole bunch of different things that pop down, and one of them will be Facebook ads. And if you click on that, Facebook will really walk you through the entire process. And what's kind of nice about it is that you can totally set your budget from start to finish. So in other words, you can say, like, to Facebook in that process, they make it really easy. They walk you through it step by step. You can say, hey, I just really want to spend $10 a month or $5 a month. And the purpose of my ads, and this is another thing, is that Facebook will help you. The more information that you give Facebook about what you're trying to achieve with those ads, they literally will make the ads so that you achieve what you want. It's kind of amazing, but because Facebook is an ad company and because they're tracking everything that everybody does on Facebook, they have by far and away the best idea of how to do something on Facebook. They really own Facebook, because they do. and so because of that, you can say to them, what I really want to do, Facebook, is I really want to get more people to like my page. And
Right.
And I only want to spend $5 a month. And Facebook will say, great, we will make that happen for you. And you'd be amazed, but they they actually will make it happen. And it's like, and the funny thing is that I know $5 a month might not seem like very much money, but it's a lot more money than what 90% of the people that want to do things on Facebook will ever spend. So what's kind of incredible is that if you spend a little bit of money on Facebook and work with Facebook, you'd be amazed at the difference in what you get out of it. Because guess what? Facebook, as an advertising company, wants you to be successful.
Sure. Oh, that's great advice. Thanks, Jeff.
And just to add, I mean, just one last thing to add on advertising. At this point, through Facebook, you can also advertise on Instagram because Instagram is a Facebook product, so that's also nice. But Twitter and the other platforms have their own situations. Some of them are a little bit more difficult, so you kind of, depending on the platform that you want to do an ad on, including Google, you just have to kind of go in, do a little bit of research about it, but none of them are super difficult, but you know, they all have different elements, so it's a little bit more of an info grab than Facebook. Facebook is much simpler.
Got it. Okay, the next question is, how do you engage people in conversations? By asking questions or telling stories? How can we engage an audience for the awareness weeks, for example?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great question. And my answer is really all of the above. I mean, these days, especially on Facebook, but also on all these other platforms, really, you start the conversation however you start it. Many people have found that asking a question is a great way to start a conversation because basically you're out there asking people, hey, what do you think about this? Let us know. But the other thing is any compelling content that you can come up with, anything that's liable to interest your audience can be a conversation starter. And here's where the whole free like a puppy's free thing comes in. Because once the discussion starts, it's more work for you. Because as people start to answer your questions, as people start to ask their own questions, as people start to add in little tidbits, you have to be there because that is what really keeps the conversation going and what convinces others. This is an interesting thing, and I'll put a little emphasis or bold on this next thing I'm going to tell you, because this is something I've learned from just real experts out there in the world of digital engagement, is that discussions that happen online, anybody that actually makes it across the barrier, which is that exists out there, that people don't really do things like comment or talk to you online. But once somebody's jumped over that barrier and they are giving you a comment, what they are saying is that they want to talk to you. They want to hear back from you. They want an acknowledgement of the fact that they have jumped over that barrier. Now, they're not thinking about it that way. It's not a conscious thing. But unconsciously, they're reaching out and they want something in return. If they don't get something in return, it's not liable that they will do that again. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to answer every comment or whatever. One thing that we train people in the State Department is, let's say you get 100 comments on a post. And now some of you are probably sitting there thinking, 100 comments, that would be awesome. And it's true. That's the way I think. I have my own personal things that I do. If I get 100 comments, I'm jumping around with joy. But let's say you get 100 comments. The way to really make this happen is to go back to your goal and your behavior that you want. Find out of those 100 comments, you find the top 10 or 15 that are the most relevant to that comment or to that post and to the behavior and to the audience. And then you make a concerted effort to comment and respond to those. What that does is that tells everybody else out there, hey, see, the people that made the relevant comments got responded to. And that actually, what you're doing by that is you're training your audience that if they are relevant in their responses and if they're being a part of the conversation in a positive way, that they're going to get what they really want, which is to hear back from you and to be a part of a real conversation, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That's great. It almost sounds like common sense, but it's applying common sense everyday communication into your social media strategy, and it makes a lot of sense. Thanks for that.
Sure.
There's another question here. How should professionals manage their personal social media pages? For example, does the State Department have guidelines for what you can post on your personal page?
Yeah, that's a great question, and yes, we do. And in fact, that is one of my least favorite modules to do when I'm training people that work at State Department, because of course nobody wants any guidelines on their personal social media. They don't mind if they have guidelines on their professional social media, but State Department's very particular because, of course, when you work at the State Department, you're dealing with what we call a bilateral relationship between countries. Like, for instance, if you're stationed in Panama, there's a relationship between the U.S. and Panama, and so there are things you just have to be careful with along those lines. But in the world of healthcare, I think it's also quite similar. Like, I know in my own personal social media, my personal Facebook and other things like that, it's mostly a place where I hang out with my family and share photos and stuff like that. I'm not really doing a lot of advocacy or those kinds of things in my personal social media. I do that in groups that I have set up, and I do that in pages that I have set up on Facebook. And I think that's a really good rule of thumb, because with your personal social media and Facebook, as I mentioned sort of earlier in the talk, you can really clamp down the security and make sure that you feel comfortable with how things are going to work on that page, so that you're not showing things that you don't want to show to people you don't know, et cetera, like that. But I just think that it's funny, but people do it in such different ways. Like, I know people at the State Department who are absolutely equal. Like, their personal and their professional are exactly the same, and they share everything that they would on their professional with their personal, and et cetera, et cetera. And that's one way of doing it. My way of doing it, completely different, where I keep my personal and I have my professionals professional. And that's all because that's just what I'm more comfortable with. So I guess, I don't know if I'm totally answering your question, but I think whatever makes sense to your life and to what makes it more convenient for you, I think that's what you should do. And I think also having a professional that's different than your personal kind of allows you to be free in your professional, situation to, kind of do what you want, and maybe, feel unfettered like you might in your personal page, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. Jeff, I think we're out of time for questions at this point.
Okay.
And I wanted to thank you for the excellent presentation, and especially the Q&A portion. I also want to thank Shire for supporting this important educational program. And I also want to thank the participants for joining us. It was wonderful to have you here today. We'll post a recording of this presentation on the Oley website in case you'd like to view it again, or if you want to share it with others. And we hope also that you will join us for another webinar. We're planning a webinar for each month through June. Our next presentation will be held February 7th as part of Feeding Tube Awareness Week. Dr. Mark Klang will demystify feeding tube clogs. He's an expert from Memorial Sloan Kettering. For more details or to register or to see a full schedule, visit the Oley website at oley.org/webinars. That's all for today. And again, thank you so much, Jeff. We really appreciate it.
Thanks a lot.
Bye-bye.